Schaefer from 24/7 Sports joining us right now. Mike, I was congratulating you because Shane Lowry is leading the British Open, your brother. Have you talked to him yet?
I haven't. I've been busy with my own important golf outing that started yesterday as well. Shane Lowry rocketed up the leaderboards, and me and my team are doing quite well in the last flight.
Did you finish 7 under as well?
We finished with 11 points in match play. That seems pretty
good
out of a possible 12.
Wait, what do you got going on? Are you guys doing what's happening over there?
It's called the Quest. It's the member guest out at Hawthorne. So
I
am decidedly not in football mode, but I still felt like I should join you this morning.
Thanks. So I just cannot get really into the weeds too much on recruiting or anything else Husker football. We could just talk golf this whole time and talk about your team strategy.
Well, you could do that. I don't know that people would be that interested. Or you could get into the weeds and we can just see where my answers come from.
That's true.
Morning as I'm half awake.
First of all, did you have a bit of a headache this morning? That's the first thing I want to ask.
Yeah, different. It's different when you got the 5-month-old at home and you're still having to get up at 6.
That's true.
So he slept through the night, so I really can't complain. And I tapered it more than I would have last night normally, so it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad.
Well, I've heard I've never been in a member guest, but I've heard stories of certain places and member guests on how they do take their toll on you after a couple of days. So I know you'll do it responsibly as you always do, Mike.
The responsible thing is I'm nowhere near keys or a car. That's the response.
That's yes, absolutely. We saw a tweet of excitement, anticipation from both Tony White and Terrence Knighton. Schaefer, could you speculate on where that one might be coming from? If it's having to do with the recruit or recruits?
It seems like it would be about a recruit. And then obviously, Terrence Knighton's involvement makes you think a defensive lineman. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing is Nebraska's board at defensive line. I mean, they got Malcolm Simpson. They missed on a few other guys that they had kind of liked, but the defensive line isn't an area in a class where they really have to get a lot of guys, but there is a really intriguing recruit out of North Dakota named Cade Peterzak that Nebraska has brought in for an official visit. He's also visited Kansas State and Oklahoma. He's a fascinating recruit in this sense. I don't think he's done a single interview in this entire process. He certainly has with 24/7 Sports. I'm guessing he hasn't with the other services. If he's done anything, it's probably been, someone saw him in person. And even then, he might have probably politely declined. So he fascinates me because there's such an absence of information. So everyone sort of has to operate off of, what they're hearing from the team recruiting side of things. And I don't know a lot. I haven't asked a lot about Cade Peterzak because it seems like Kansas State or Oklahoma were out in front.
Yeah.
But Nebraska has really kind of pushed for him. He's visited, I think, 3 or 4 times. He's a guy that I believe that Matt Rule and the staff think pretty highly of. He's someone that I wouldn't be surprised if in the recruiting industry, I don't think he did a lot of camps. I think he's just kind of a quiet kid who just happens to be a really good football player.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the absence of quotes and information, it's kind of like a throwback recruitment.
Yeah.
Nobody really knows what's going on. But that was kind of the first name that came to mind when I saw that as well. I mean, there's other defensive recruits like Christian Jones, but I wouldn't look for him to change his timeline. He's been pretty emphatic that he wants to make a decision during his senior season or after his senior season. So, Cade Peterzak is the first one that stood out to me. And here's the other thing. The kid doesn't really tweet. He doesn't really talk. What if he just commits and nobody knows?
Right, which would be very un-2024 of any student athlete. But, I mean, if that's your MO and if you're consistent to that, you're right. I just found it very interesting that there was all of a sudden a shift in some of the crystal ball predictions that were now going towards Nebraska with him.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually what happens is nobody knows what's going on, and then a kernel of information either appears or comes out, and then someone will make the prediction and a bunch of people will follow in suit because they don't want to be wrong
Right.
on their previous predictions. So it's it's kind of a follow the leader sometimes with that.
Schaefer, do you think by the time Big Ten Media Days gets underway next Tuesday in Indianapolis that Will Hawthorne will be a Husker?
I think Nebraska's done a really nice job recruiting there, and he's another guy I could have mentioned too when we were talking about defensive recruits. If they actually get Will Hawthorne, it would be one of the few head-to-head wins they have over Matt Campbell and Iowa State in this class, which sounds kind of weird, but Nebraska really liked the quarterback Alex Mansky. They really liked Jack Limbaugh. They liked a couple other guys out of Iowa, but it had been kind of quiet for him this year. Will Hawthorne's the only official visitor out of Iowa, I believe. But they did a really nice job in terms of recruiting him. I know Caden Vermoss was really involved in peer recruiting, and I think they put themselves in strong position. And I believe he's set to make a decision here within the week. And I think just based off Brian Christopherson's kind of been running lead on it for us, just based on the way Brian talks about it and the way that Will talks about Nebraska, it seems like the Huskers might actually pull him from Iowa State. And he's a really interesting developmental linebacker prospect. I mean, I think, I don't know if the scholarship would be there if Dawson Merritt had chosen Nebraska.
Yeah.
But he's kind of a fallback option in that regard, but it's a good one to have. I mean, I think he's a guy that you might need a few years, but he's a really athletic linebacker, can play in coverage, can play in space, and that's sort of what Nebraska needs. You also have to have the ability to come forward. Like it's sort of a rare find anymore. That's why you see some safeties that get moved up the linebacker. Finding that high school guy that can do all of those things kind of stands out at this point in 2024.
Talking to Mike Schaefer, Husker 24/7 Sports here on 1620 The Zone. Okay, so you mentioned Christian Jones. I went there yesterday, even knowing that most likely that decision is probably coming in the fall. At least that's what we were led to believe. Is that the timeline we're hearing, Schaefer, still for a decision?
That's what Christian has told me
Okay.
consistently.
Okay.
I have not talked to him since before the 4th, but my understanding is, and I was going to reach out to see if he is taking a visit somewhere. He wanted to potentially take a visit at the end of July, and then he was going to be done with visits until the season starts. And obviously everybody has the dead period sets in. But my understanding was he basically wants to get to October and see where things are at. And I think a big part of this is he wants to see what type of season Nebraska is going to have.
Yeah.
Because, again, this is a guy that for most of his life, certainly most of his conscious life, Nebraska football hasn't been good. And so, yes, there's a lot of excitement. Yes, he knows he's a top player in the state. Yes, he knows that there's a lot of reasons that he would be a good fit there. He loves the coaching staff. I think he wants to see if they can win football games. And if Nebraska comes out and they take care of UTEP and Colorado and get a good start to the season, the chances of getting Christian Jones go through the roof. If they come out and they're 3-4 in the middle of October, one, there's going to be a lot of panic around here. Two, that's just not the recipe, and I think Nebraska knows that. I think they know they've done everything you can do save of winning of this point. And if they can do that, I think they can walk away with that commitment.
I want to ask you about the current roster here in just a moment, but there's one other guy I wanted to ask you about. As we know, Chase Lofton, he made his commitment to Florida State. You look maybe ahead to the 2026 class. You start looking at that tight end position. I want to get your thoughts on Isaac Jensen. I know his father. I went to actually high school with his father, Jason. I know he is a big-bodied guy. Where interest stands with Nebraska, where Isaac Jensen might have interest with Nebraska. What are you hearing about him for the tight end out of Millard South for 2026?
Yeah, Isaac will be at Nebraska. They got kind of a visit weekend coming into form here next weekend as the dead period lifts. And I think they're calling it an elite recruit weekend. So take that however you want. But Isaac is a guy that the staff really likes. I think, likes Nebraska quite a bit. He had a really good junior day visit. He's been out there a few times. He spent time around the staff. And when I talked to him in June at one of those 7-on-7 events that Mike Sauter does, he was pretty high on Nebraska and just excited about where things were at, but also really excited about the upcoming season at Millard South, where they they kind of feel like they can do some damage and potentially win a state title. So I don't know. He kind of made it seem like once he had finished up with visits and stuff in the summer, he was going to put everything else kind of to bed. Now to see him coming back to Nebraska, I think is a good sign. I think he's going to be, I hesitate to call him a 4-star, but I think he's got a lot of the traits that Carter Nelson had, that some of these good tight ends that have come out of Nebraska. I mean, he's tall, he's sudden, he moves with purpose. Like he's got big catch radius. Nebraska's been blessed. They have all these tight ends that come out of the state right now.
Yeah.
And I think Isaac Jensen can match up, in terms of production and ability with almost any of them. I think he's that good.
Looking at some of the different storylines that we could see, but also as we get into camp, we've talked about it before, you, Gary, and myself, of the wide receiving position and how significant that's going to be this year for Nebraska. A guy that I continue to hear good things about, and somebody that I'm wondering, given the fact that you have two transfers in Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nayor, that is going to help free up some other guys, especially like a Jalen Lloyd and other players that are trying to get into position. Continue to hear the type of size and just overall ability shape that Isaiah Garcia Castaneda is in. I'm trying not to completely buy into, he could be maybe a breakout type player amongst that group, but is there a case to be made based on what we know of him when he's been healthy amongst other guys that are hopefully going to bring that group like a Nayor and Banks to a higher level, that maybe Isaiah Garcia Castaneda can be a beneficiary of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that his talent has never been in question. It's just that he got hurt last year. And the 2022 season was, really kind of nobody's cup of tea. I don't know that he fit well with Mickey Joseph. He had a fantastic first game against Northwestern. I mean, everyone remembers that catch that kicked off the 2022 season over in Ireland. And so he's a guy where I don't think talent's ever really kind of been the question. It's been availability for him. And if he is back in shape, if he can help out, he's 6'3".
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy who's got great leaping ability. Again, Nebraska's wide receiver room, I keep saying this, it is as deep and as good as it's been in over a decade. And the most comparable, I shouldn't say over a decade, but right in that sort of Quincy Enunwa, Kenny Bell, Jordan Westerkamp, Brandon Riley, Alonzo Moore, which led into Stanley Morgan, J.D. Spielman, like that run, that kind of 4-year run that they had there. That's what I think Nebraska is setting up toward.
Yeah.
And I think they've got a lot of really intriguing young wide receivers, but I wouldn't sleep on somebody like Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, because if he could prove that he can stay healthy, they're going to play him. And this is a guy with a lot of game experience. He's older. I think he can be helpful. Again, I'm not expecting like 8 touchdown, 700-yard performance, but can you get 5 touchdowns and 350 yards? That would be big. He's just one of those guys in the red zone. You can throw up the ball, get it to him. He's a guy that I think he has more speed than people probably realize. I just think you can utilize him in different ways. They have so many different types of wide receivers. It's such a fun position this year relative to where things were last year or even in kind of the past 5 years.
Before I let you go, I mentioned this when we opened the show off. All three of our teams in this studio, Gary is on vacation day, but of course his Cubs, Jimmy's Astros, and you and I's Cleveland baseball squad, all in good shape in various ways, whether it's the wild card or in the division. Are you anything about the lack of offense there towards the end of the first half have you feeling a little itchy and scratchy about our beloved Cleveland baseball team?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you don't like to see them leaking oil into the halfway point, but they have a great opportunity in front of them to go out and add talent. There's absolutely no reason why the front office or the ownership group should have hesitation to go get a piece or two to help this year. It's comparable in a lot of ways to 2016, where you've got a young team. You can get a couple of players that have 1 or 2 years of control and cost control. I mean, they have the ability. They haven't come close to stretching the Dolan's budget, if you will. So I
it's true.
We'll see what they choose to do. They also really like a lot of their internal pieces. I mean, Angel Martinez has been pretty good. John Pensky Noel has been pretty good. But I think there's an opportunity if they can go out and get a right fielder and, a mid-rotation guy.
Yeah.
I think they're going to go do that. Now, the Twins have been pretty good. The
Yeah.
Royals have stayed pretty good. But as we saw, the Yankees, the Orioles, the Astros, the Mariners, they've all gone through it at some point this year. And Cleveland did right before the All-Star break. So I'm still reasonably confident.
All right.
You're 22 games up over 500. That's a good spot to be in.
Never thought we would have that conversation going into the season where we are right now. So.
Nope, I did not think they were going to be good this year.
I did not either. So you're right. I'll take it. Good perspective there. I needed you to bounce me out there. Schaefer, hit him straight today, my man. Appreciate you coming on. Have a great weekend.
Appreciate it. Have a good one. Have a good weekend yourself.